what I had to explain exactly last year this time when we had a delegation come over from one of the G7 countries from Europe is that they didn't realize that the President of the United States, if he made a directed inquiry in the subject, would be lied to about the subject.
Right.
And when they heard that that's what had happened to Bill Clinton, they were sort of, well, the word was they were horrified. And I said, look, the reason that's the case in America, they didn't understand it because they're from a smaller country. Even though they're a G7 country, there's frankly no country like America in terms of its military and economic size. And I said, look, you have in America, we lose more money each year in our so-called black budget, the secret budget of the United States government, than any other government has. In other words, we have 100 to 200 billion U.S. dollars a year disappearing into these black projects, and that amount exceeds the total military and intelligence expenditure of any other country in the world. And that's just the part that goes missing.
Yeah.
This is just the part that goes missing. So what people have to get their minds around, as people are listening from Denmark and France and Germany and what have you, is that the size of this military complex in America is mind-blowing. It is so enormous.
Yeah. And in some cases, even trillions have been lost. We know that as well in terms of what Rumsfeld said back in 2001 as well, before 9/11. But if we look at this from the point of view of disclosure again, then as you mentioned, other countries have been releasing files, the UK, even Sweden, France as well. The question obviously is, as you explained, or the difficult situation you explained, is how things are going in the US because the nature of how things are run. But where do you feel that how could this be resolved? Could this be resolved if ET, so to speak, steps in here and actually do something by, it's been said before, kind of as a joke, but land on the White House lawn or what have you? Would that open up this question even more?
Well, of course, they have been doing a number of things over the last 50 years. We head up a team of the CSETI. If you go to cseti.org, we head up a citizens diplomatic outreach effort that has been going now for 20 years, and we have had astonishing events. To the point that we've even had a trans-dimensional ET being appear near our group in the Joshua Tree National Park in November that we got a photograph of that is highly controversial, but there's no question about what it is. We actually even know what galaxy this being is from, as far-fetched as some people may think that to be.
Okay.
The question is, and this is they're not going to force the issue before we appear ready. And because if they did, they would hit a tripwire where the fear mongers like Stephen Hawking, getting back to that comment, would say, see, we're being invaded. They have to be very careful not to appear as if they're doing anything too aggressive, because they know, human nature being what it is, that the people who would want to kind of make hay, as it were, and spin that event, they could spin it in a way that would say, oh my God, look what's happened. We're being invaded by a civilization from another star system, and throw the whole world into sort of a military response like the day the Earth stood still. If you look at that old movie from 1951.
Right.
And I think that this is one of the real problems we're facing, is that on the one hand, the ETs, I believe, really do want to have open contact occur. But in our group, the cseti.org group, cseti.org, has been doing this as sort of an ad hoc diplomatic effort for a number of years. But in terms of an official response from a peaceful diplomatic initiative from our State Department or from the United Nations, this has not been happening. And this is something that needs to happen in an open and transparent way. And I think that they're waiting for us to get to the point that we do that. If they were just to come in and land, first of all, if they tried to land on the White House lawn, they'd be blown out of the sky. But secondly, and this brings up another issue which most people are not aware of, there are very advanced technologies that are called longitudinal or scalar electromagnetic weapons. That big spiral that you saw over Norway last fall when Obama was there getting the Nobel Peace Prize, that was actually a demonstration of a scalar weapon.
Really?
Yes, we know what those.
How do you know that?
I was warned by some people in the military and intelligence community that something like that was going to happen a week before it did. So we were expecting it.
Do you know why? Was it a signaler in some way, or why would they?
It was a demonstration of power, covert power.
Mm.
In other words, it was a shot across the bow saying, "See what we can do." Mm-hmm. Now, I think that what people have to understand is that since at least the mid-1960s, there have been operational weapons that can reach into space that have targeted extraterrestrial vehicles. And in terms of land-based systems, these have been operational since at least the 40s. A lot of people, I don't know if you've heard of the so-called Roswell incident.
Sure, of course.
Most people have. It's not a myth. It did happen. But what people don't know about that, and I have an FBI document from a field agent to J. Edgar Hoover dated 1947 that states that what that was that there was actually what euphemistically was called a new radar system, which was actually one of these scalar Tesla-type coiled electromagnetic weapon systems that was in a radar dome at Roswell, where we had our only nuclear weapon storage area at the time. And that was the only nuclear base in the world at the time in 1947, July, when that happened. Mm. And when these ET craft moved in, they were checking out what in the world we were doing with these nuclear weapons because they knew how dangerous they were. They switched this weapon system on, which, because these interstellar spacecraft, when they materialize, are fully electronic. I mean, they're not using jet engines or anything like that. They hit each other. One crashed into the other. So one went down north of Roswell, and the other one continued westward and went and crashed near Socorro, New Mexico. And that was actually an early hit by an electromagnetic weapon system hitting an extraterrestrial vehicle. They didn't, one of the things that doesn't add up to most scientists is that you don't travel through interstellar distances, fly over New Mexico and just happen to accidentally crash. Right. There was nothing accidental about the Roswell event. It was a deliberate early Star Wars hit. And that's now 60-some years ago, 63 years. So what you have to understand is that there is a undeclared, at least to the public, weaponry that exists that have already weaponized space. It's highly classified, that target these craft. So one of the things that we have observed, I'll give you one example. We had a craft that was right near Mount Shasta, California, where we were doing a training for about 30 people back in 2004 or 5. And as this craft emerged from this volcano, and it was this luminous white plasma-like energy form, and as it moved towards us and it was signaling to us, we went up on a hillside. A high-flying aircraft, the 747, moved in and fired one of these weapons that crashed into the woods right in front of us, about 200 yards in front of our group. Mm-hmm. And it actually burrowed into the ground. Now, it wasn't a solid. It was an energy weapon, electromagnetic weapon. And we have 30 or 40 witnesses to this, by the way. Now, the ET craft that was there instantly dematerialized. And we actually have some very good video footage of these craft around Mount Shasta. What was worrisome to me is that they would take such an action. So to fire this electromagnetic beam, and this is not thunder or lightning, it was crystal clear sky, and it was clearly, we could see what it was. Hmm. So one of the things that I've told people, and by the way, we're going to do one of these trainings for people in France in this summer. We're actually going to do a 3-day, 3 nights at this fabulous 2,000-acre place in France on July 10th, 11th, and 12th for people who want to join us. Mm-hmm. They can find out about that at cseti.org. But what we've found from doing these sort of expeditions all over the world over the last 20 years is that there are countermeasures that have been used. And if they've used those while we're making contact, imagine if an extraterrestrial vehicle tried to land on the White House lawn. So there has to be a coordinated standing down of these weapon systems at the same time that there's a diplomatic outreach to these civilizations. And to do that, the president and the other leaders around the world need what is called actionable intelligence. And that's what we have provided. What I didn't have for Clinton, we now have for Obama, and that is the specific project code names, which corporations, which sub-facilities, which project code numbers are involved with this. And we have those. And those have been provided through very, very high contacts we have in the White House and in the Senate Intelligence Committee and House Intelligence Committee, and also it's been provided to the new CI Director, Leon Panetta, and Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates. Now, whether or not they are actually able to get control of these projects remains to be seen,
right.
but they're going to have to try, and to do that they're going to have to